Are you tired of feeling like you have absolutely no idea what's going on in your games? Are you frustrated with getting dumpstered by the enemy team every game? Maybe you just want to cover your bases and see if there's anything you could be doing better in-game. Whether you haven't played since Paragon, or if you only recently started playing, or even if you've never played a MOBA before, this Predecessor Top 10 Tips Guide will contain valuable information for both beginners and experts alike that, if applied, I guarantee will have a positive impact on your games. So we're going to dive right into these here, guys, but if you all do go on to enjoy this content, I'm challenging you all to get this video to 50 likes, so please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, so that you can catch that new hotness as soon as it's posted. But without any further ado, my friends, let's hit it off with tip number 1. First and foremost, this is the single most important tip I can offer that will drastically limit the amount of negative experiences that you'll have while playing this game, and that is to turn off the team chat. There is a ton of salt in MOBA games, and Pred is no exception. People will waste their time and yours whining about stuff they usually have no clue what they're talking about, or they just enjoy being toxic cesspools of anti-fun. I know a lot of people think they won't get tilted by chat, but even beyond the tilt, the time spent typing is time you could be spending to try and come back into the game. 99% of the time, it's just not worth it. Just turn it off. While I do advise playing with team chat off, not communicating with your team at all is a recipe for disaster. So if you're not going to be playing the majority of your games with your whole team in a voice chat or Discord, you need to understand how to relay important comms to inform your teammates when you're engaging or disengaging, when it's time to take objectives, or just an area in general they should shift their attention to. It's not complex, but it can take a second to learn where all the comms are stashed. Oh, and bonus tip while we're here, try your best to listen to your team's pings. If your jungler has been spam pinging Fangtooth for the past 10-15 seconds and it's not an obviously stupid call, try not to just blow them off. Drop what you're doing, go help them out. Teams that work together win together. Moving on, everyone has a different preference when it comes to their cast settings, but really I think it depends. Some heroes I prefer instant cast, some heroes I like to be able to hold the ability and aim if I need to. But in a perfect world, we could set individual cast keybinds for each hero, but such a feature doesn't exist yet. So if you're not willing to change your cast settings for each hero, and I don't blame you, that's a ton of work, my own personal recommendation for the best kind of blanket default setting would probably be quick cast. This setting casts your abilities on release, so you can still kind of hold and aim the button if you so choose. Some abilities, however, you can just throw on instant cast, such as your blink and your first and second item slot, smite, for instance. But, you know, what works for me might not work for everybody, so definitely play around with these to find settings to your liking. Speaking of playing around with different things, one of the most underrated game features right now is the practice mode. I know it's not perfectly fleshed out, but it is still a very good space you can use when starting out to try new things, whether it's practice mode or bot games, or heck, if you have 9 friends just sitting around to play custom games with, use these tools to get comfortable with new keybinds, test new item builds, practice farming, or play new heroes. Speaking of which, the famous General Sun Tzu said, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. And that is certainly applicable to Predecessor. See, MOBAs are a particularly difficult genre on their own because they present a wealth of information that all has a role to play in the decisions that you make in-game. The more you learn about your enemy, the more you learn about other characters, the better your decisions become, as do your chances to win more consistently. So don't be afraid to try new heroes, especially now while the game is in early access. You have absolutely nothing to lose. I recommend making it a goal to take every hero in the game for a spin at least once, even if it is just in a bot game. Look at that, we're halfway done already. Moving on to tip number 6. I know a lot of people post item builds in just about every corner of the internet, but there is no replacement placement for developing your own skill to actually read items and appraise their worth. Don't get me wrong, it is a skill that takes time and practice, which I do realize some people may not have the time or desire for, but I recommend that you spend at least a couple minutes in the items tab on the main menu looking at some of the items you build regularly. You don't have to break out the flashcards and memorize every single stat on every single item, but you should at least kind of understand the why behind that broken build you keep building. Okay, so you've optimized your settings, you found a hero and build you want to try out, and you're ready to hop into your very first game. Let's talk about primary points to focus on while you're playing, the first of which is becoming familiar with your UI. Now, ideally, you should understand what everything in the UI is before you hop into a game, because there are a lot of things going on within your HUD, most important of which are your health and mana, your ability cooldowns, your team comms, and your minimap. One of the best things you can do for yourself, and this is kind of a 2 tips in 1, is start to train your brain to check these things constantly throughout the game, especially your minimap. There should almost be this metronome inside your head going off every so often, alerting you to shift your eyes to the minimap, even just for a split second, to check for allies in the area, the current wave state of your lane or other lanes, rotating enemies, and jungle cooldown timers. You never know what intel you could pick up. It might even be something that could save your life. But developing these skills early on will only help you be a better player in the long run. Tip number 8 is warding, and I'll probably end up doing a standalone video on warding if you guys want, but as a general rule of thumb, you should be warding important junctions as often as you can. While individual fights may be won with kills, games are won with vision. If 2 identically skilled teams win against each other, but one warded better and more often than the other, I would bet my life savings, as little as that is, the team that warded would win the match. It's that powerful. I won't go too far into depth on specific ward placement, but for now, let's develop the little skills and just put your wards down as often as you can. Tip number 9 is farming, and once again, this can and probably will be a whole video on its own, but for now, just understand that it's an understatement to say that farming is a vital part of the game. From beginning to end, it's the most consistent way of getting ahead and staying ahead of your enemies until the end game. A typical 5-man wave of minions is worth 110 gold, and while that may not sound like a lot on its own, if you miss multiple waves over the course of the game and your opponent does not, you'll more than likely see or feel that difference in power. So don't neglect farm, and I know this tip is tip number 9, but this is one of the skills you should try to perfect first. Once again, practice mode is great for, well, practicing. So if you see yourself struggling with last hits a lot during games, or maybe even just as a warm-up ritual before you start playing for the day, hop into practice mode and farm waves for 5 to 10 minutes. This is a skill that, when mastered, separates the great players from the good players. Tip number 10 and the final tip, this is without a doubt the most advanced subject in the video, and yet another skill that you'll develop over time as you get more reps in with the game and even more reps with specific heroes into other hero-specific matchups. But something you should be paying attention to is when you or your enemy puts themselves in a position to die. Like I said, this is a pretty advanced subject, so I'm going to try to compartmentalize it, but what I mean by this is whether it's a direct item advantage, a numbers gank, or just bad positioning, there are times when skill kind of takes a back seat and the sort of mathematical numbers of the game just take over. These times where, regardless of player input, a character is just dead. You can kill Rev if you can trap him.
I mean, he didn't really put much of a fight up, so.
Cool, bro.
Nice.
This is one of the more difficult things to gauge as the skill disparity between you and your opponents narrows, but just try your best to actively pay attention in-game to determine when you're strong and when you're weak. That will make these decisions easier, and you can always adjust your playstyle accordingly. Again, if you guys want me to expand on any of these topics, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'm more than happy to share what I know. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. I just wanted to rattle off some of the parts of the game that may be more difficult for brand new players to pick up. If this video helped you in any way, drop a like, and if you guys want me to go more in depth on a topic like wave management, warding, etc., drop a comment below. I'll be sure to make that video for you guys. Thanks for being here. I hope you guys have a great tomorrow, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace. Yep, GG's.
Okay.
GG's.
Yeah, that prime was it. That's all it took.
Yep, that was the, yep.